Good evening and welcome to tonight's edition of Fact Sheet Live on ETV Live on Nisim 95.9 in Bogotanga and 100.1 in Tamale. Also live on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. Our handle is ETV Ghana. Tonight, we're talking about the protection of the public purse. The fact that the people of Ghana take a decision to entrust the public purse into the hands of an executive leadership who are supposed to protect the public purse. We're talking about the fight against corruption. We're talking about the years of clamoring for governments to ensure that the public purse is protected and that people who are found culpable are dealt with by the law. Now, what's informing this conversation? This is informed by a statement which came from His Excellency the President, and I'd like to share that with you before we delve into the issues. It's a statement which came on the 14th of November 2022, and this is the headline. President Akufo-Addo terminates appointment of Charles Edu Boahene, and it reads, the President of the Republic, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, has terminated the appointment of the Minister of State at the Ministry of Finance, Mr. Charles Edu Boahene, with immediate effect. After being made aware of the allegations leveled against the minister in an expose, Galamsey Economy, the President spoke to Mr. Edu Boahene, after which he took the decision to terminate his appointment and also to refer the matter to the Special Prosecutor for further investigations. The President thanked Mr. Edu Boahene for his strong services to his government since his appointment in 2017 and wished him well in his future endeavors. And this was signed by Mr. Eugene, who is the Director of Communications at the Presidency. If viewers would recollect, a few weeks ago, we had the majority side in Parliament, over 80 of them, call for the sacking of the Finance Minister and this same gentleman, Mr. Charles Edu Boahene. What was their reason? Their reason was that these two gentlemen had run the economy aground, and that based upon that, they did not have any confidence in these two gentlemen to run the affairs of the economy, and therefore His Excellency the President must fire them, or these gentlemen must resign by themselves. There were rumors in the air, especially on social media, that Mr. Charles Edu Boahene had tendered in his resignation letter and that His Excellency the President had not accepted it. It was refuted, and so we moved on with the minority in Parliament filing a motion of censure, which today started its proceedings, and we all followed it keenly. But this evening, we got a statement coming from the Office of the Special Prosecutor, which had been called upon by His Excellency the President to ensure that this matter of the allegation which has been brought against Mr. Charles Edu Boahene is investigated by Tiger IPI. And this is a statement from the Office of the Special Prosecutor. Charles Edu Boahene, press release. By a letter dated 14th of November 2022 and reference OPS 305/1/22/1106, the Secretary to the President, upon the directions of the President, referred to the Office of the Special Prosecutor for further investigations, allegations of corruption leveled against Mr. Charles Edu Boahene, former Minister of State at the Ministry of Finance, contained in an investigative expose published by Tiger IPI and the investigative journalist Anas Aremia Anas, entitled Galamsey Economy. The Office of the Special Prosecutor has promptly commenced investigations into the actions of Mr. Charles Edu Boahene and any other implicated person contained in the investigative expose Galamsey Economy. On the sign, Kisi Ejaben, Special Prosecutor. There are questions on our minds tonight, even as we try to delve deeper into the issues. One is the issue of the concern which has been raised by Mr. Charles Edu Boahene, that all this is a matter of entrapment by people who targeted him in 2018. So, in the eyes of the law, does entrapment count as a process to ensure that corruption is fought? And would the courts accept this footage in any court proceedings which may happen? There is also the issue of the investigation into the matter of Mr. Charles Edu Boahene and any other person who may be investigated. Are we likely to see a full-scale investigation, one by the Office of the Special Prosecutor, Iyoko and Co., since many say that this is not an investigation the OSP alone must be interested in. Some say the CID must be interested in this matter as well. Now, at the political bit, would this in any way compel His Excellency the President to fire the Finance Minister, seeing that he has said that we should hold on for the Finance Minister to complete the IMF negotiations? All these are issues in our minds tonight, even as we attempt to make a sense of the issues therein when it comes to the sacking of Mr. Charles Adu Boahene. My name is Samuel Chen, and I warmly welcome you to the conversation. Do stay with us. And welcome back to the conversation. To help me discuss the issue tonight, I will be joined on phone by Mr. Adib Sani, who is a foreign policy and security analyst. Professor Samuel Edijenfi would also be joining us. He's with the Department of History and Political Studies at KNUST. And Mr. William Amofa would also join us. He is a governance expert to also throw more light as to the implications for the President Akufo-Addo government, especially at a time when people are calling for a reshuffle to happen within his administration, especially when there had been calls earlier for him to sack these two gentlemen. Would this be reason enough for Mr. Kenneth Furiata to as well go? All these are questions that we're going to ask ourselves tonight on the show, but I encourage you to go to Facebook and look for ETV Ghana and share your thoughts and your views and comments with us, even as you watch the show live on this platform. I encourage you to share it to other platforms that you might be on, be it on WhatsApp, Telegram, YouTube, or any other places you'd find yourself. Please ensure that you like and you share so we can have a meaningful conversation. Once again, you are welcome to the conversation. So, to set the ball rolling, we ask ourselves, how far do we expect that this investigation by the Office of the Special Prosecutor would travel? There have been calls for the immediate arrest of Mr. Charles Adu Boahene, seeing that some say that this amounts to criminality and that immediately the CID must arrest him and then effect investigations into these allegations. There have been concerns about the methodology as well used by the Tiger IPI crew in terms of trying to bring down corruption in this country. Now, the major question people are asking is, why should it take a private investigator to unravel these issues when we have state institutions clothed with powers to conduct such investigations and bring to book people whom the people have, entrusted their confidence in to ensure that the public purse is protected? People are asking that if you read the content of that letter that was sent to Mr. Adu Boahene, remember that on his own social media handle, he had indicated that he resigned. And so on social media, it's rife with a lot of debate as to whether indeed the president fired him or Mr. Charles Adu Boahene resigned. These are all matters that we are hoping that at the end of the day, by the time the show ends, we would have come to a better understanding and appreciation of these issues. And so once again, I welcome you to the conversation. Now, I want to read to you a story which would form one of the, issues we would be dealing with, and that has to do with one of my guests and a statement which he made, and whether that can be premise enough for us to set the ball rolling tonight. It reads, and this is the headline: Adib Sani gives excerpts of Galamsey economy, calls for immediate arrest of Adu Boahene. And the story says that security analyst Adib Sani has urged President Danko Akufo-Addo to order the arrest of sacked Minister of State in charge of Finance, Charles Adu Boahene. Adib Sani, who made this call while speaking to a media house on Monday, stated that after watching Anas Aremeya's expose that Galamsey economy, that there are elements of criminality in that footage. He added that not only did Adu Boahene implicate the Vice President, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, by suggesting that one needs to pay an appearance fee before seeing him, the Vice President But he also said that the Vice President brothers must be part of an investment deal the government will buy into. So let's hit the phone lines and then start the conversation and pick the thoughts of Professor Adu Jemfi this evening. Prof, it's good to have you on the show tonight.
Thanks for having me, my brother.
And I'm hoping you're doing well, sir.
Very well.
Let me pick your initial comments on this whole brouhaha about Mr. Charles Adu Boahene. How did you receive the news, especially seeing that just a few weeks ago there had been calls for his sacking by his own members of parliament just a few weeks ago?
Yes, quite clear that, the call by Ghanaians and by the members of the guest house clearly shows that, there was something wrong, generally with the finance ministry. And so with the leadership and the actors who have been managing our finances, right, the treasurers of the state. And fundamentally, it speaks volumes and add to the kind of, if you like, cobwebs and worms that you are likely to find within that sector. But what is equally critical is the fact that we need to then ask ourselves, why did we not see this from the beginning? And why is it that the executive head did not also pay heed even to the call of Ghanaians, so far as the changes and the need to move some of these individuals from that space? I think fundamentally we need to learn lessons from that and say to ourselves that we need individuals who are not only rational actors per se, but who also have altruistic motive to serve the cause of the state. Because when you have individuals who come to politics because they feel that they want to maybe enrich themselves or get better, in terms of empowering their purses at the expense of empowering the state, then we are likely to have some of these challenges.
Now, politically, the behavior by the 80 MPs in Parliament on the majority side, how would you see that in terms of the powers that His Excellency the President wields when it comes to government business in the House? For 80 of his MPs to have stood their grounds to call for the sacking of the Finance Minister and Mr. Charles Adu Boahene, how does that translate into the President power he wields?
No, in my contemplation, yes, that is the legislature. That is exactly the role they are supposed to play. They are supposed to serve as a check on the executive, just as we know. However, we've had a majoritarian rule from time to time, consistently so. So the party that wins the executive powers, right, or forms government also has majority in parliament. And so at the end of the day, it is the majoritarian rule that dictates the pace. Secondly, the Constitution, as you've said, has allowed the president, the executive head, to wield a lot of powers. Having said that, it has made it so that it needs to employ or hire a lot of people from parliament. What then it means is that the executive, head has some powers over some members of the legislature. And in that respect, they are unable to serve as an effective check on him and also broadly on the executive. But what we see here are MPs largely who are not ministers necessarily. And again, you also would want to ask yourself, maybe the hang parliament fever is also instigating that. Having said that, you also see the exigencies of the time, because the constituents of these MPs, right, are not, wholeheartedly excited with them, and they would expect them to do more to support them as their constituents, and more so even to deliver home some public good. In that respect, when they have seen that the executive head is not performing its role well, in as much as this is being triggered or caused by the finance sector as they deem it or see it, then there is a call for them to have a better representation by speaking for and on behalf of their constituents. In that respect, it challenges the executive head, but that is a check that they put in place as a result of what the Constitution has also put them there to serve. It rather leads us to a certain party mechanism or construct, because he is also the head of the MPP. That is why around this time he's found a way to whip them into line, even though the August House Parliament is playing its role to make sure that they are able to deal with the matter going forward, to see that they will be able to see to what can be done to the finance minister, among other things. But within the politics of the party, he's also the head of the party, and he has a way of trying to whip them into line, and he has made set attempts, as a matter of fact. But you can realize that within the broader scheme of things, the masses of Ghana, including the MPP itself and their constituents, there's a certain rising chorus for change. They are interested in pegging development around, politics and our democracy. In that respect, even though he has control over the party and also control over government, he cannot just be seen to be just beating his chest and ensuring that his whim and caprices are being ensured within the scheme of things. So the parliamentarians must stand their position. They must be committed to make sure that their constituents are happy, and more so, they must understand the politics they must play internally to ensure that at the end of the day, when the president has served his term, they will still remain relevant within the party and within the politics of the country in that respect.
The I told you so issue pops up here because this gentleman was one of the people that the MPs had called for his removal. Now it has taken an expose to compel the presidency to fire him. That I told you so element, would it in any way affect the presidency's relationship with these members of parliament who have been whipped in line?
We did not need I told you so because the writers were on the wall, right? Already the relationship, I believe, is already troubled. It is like something subtle of fire underneath, some weight of refuse, right? And so gradually and systematically it was going to burn, and then it would have been a great inferno, as we are beginning to see, because the kind of challenge the NPP has had started off with the sack of Kwabena Japan, Paula Wintani Afoko, and the other ensuing politics that will evolve, right? Because somebody had to take control over the NPP and have absolute control in that sense, and that everybody had to be whipped into line so that the executive head, who was the head of the party at the time when he had not become president, had to call the shot. Today, what is happening is that whether the relationship has gone bad or not, we want to encourage these 80 persons, including others, and their guest house to do what is right. And to do what is right is to make sure that they are able to serve the interest of the state, and that is Ghana. For us to be able to develop this country, we need the legislature to serve as a check on the executive without any fear or favor. And that is why some of us have called for absolute separation and absolute separation in that sense. In that respect, let the executive head find his own ministers elsewhere, and let the guest house be insulated directly and indirectly from the executive so that they can serve as a check. And a hung parliament like this seem to give it such impetus because there is no majoritarian rule. So whether there is conflict, whether there is disagreement, whether there is likeness or dislikeness, we don't care who to exhort about that. What we are concerned is that we place Ghana first and ensure that the legislature serves as an absolute check on the executive to make sure that the executive is able to deliver home the public good.
Now, let's talk about the issue of what is going to transpire now. Should this form a basis for His Excellency the President to rescind the earlier decision that, for instance, Ken Ofori-Atta should see through the negotiation with the IMF, and then after that, he can be relieved of his position? Should the President by now be thinking twice, seeing what the expose has done to Mr. Charles Edi Boahene?
He should be thinking twice. However, I said earlier on different platforms that I'll be surprised if the president just, will give in to the cry and the call of the parliamentarians and the masses of Ghana. I would be surprised because his posture does not reflect that as somebody who is interested necessarily in listening to the call of the broader masses. I've said on a different platform that sometimes the voice of the people is the voice of God. Unfortunately, he seemed to have a different opinion, and he seemed to also believe in this particular gentleman and assume that, he assumes that his, expertise and ability to manage the finances of the state is above the roof, or maybe it's at the apogee or zenith. But having said that, I think that he has gradually and systematically depleted the gains the NPP has made over the years. And I believe that he's also systematically and gradually making sure that he leaves the NPP with nothing when we come to 2024 and he's exiting as a lame duck for another person to take over.
Now, let's talk about the impact of the prosecution of one of their own, and I mean the NPP. And if you read the statement firing Mr. Charles Boahene, you realize the hesitancy in that statement by the author of that letter in sacking Mr. Charles Boahene, because that letter tells us that His Excellency the President actually spoke to Mr. Charles Boahene before, the sacking came. What would this mean, the process of the investigation, if it leads to prosecution? What would it mean for the party politically, seeing that they'll be going into select a flag bearer and then into the 2024 elections? Is this likely to impact them negatively?
I'm sure this wouldn't be the first time a member, of a government, in that respect, not necessarily of a political party that has formed government, would have one of their own, being prosecuted, or better still, go through a process of inquiry to ensure whether he did what is right or wrong. But as we can tell, he had the right to have resigned honorably in an earlier instance when the call came from the masses, without waiting on the president for anything to happen. Secondly, the president could have also advisedly called these gentlemen, including the substantive minister himself, to have told them to resign honorably, to have allowed government business to continue, with no interruptions and set intermissions we are likely to see going forward. But I think that, yes, definitely, these occurrences and happenings depletes the gains of the government and of the NPP as a party. More so, it has the tendency to also deplete the gains of individual candidates who tilt toward the executive head and his, if you like, interest, among other things. And so it's likely to tell a certain story going forward. However, I'm not too certain that it would have a major stride in terms of changing the dynamics as to necessarily who wins the primaries to become the flag bearer. I think what will be quite intriguing going forward is how 2024 will be placed within the broader spectrum of our political discourse. For example, that would the NPP be able to perform hold any scepter or magic wand to turn things around within the next year or so, to ensure that we are able to come to a certain financial or fiscal stability, and to ensure that the macro indicators and all the other indicators that comes up in terms of ascertaining the cost of our future at least become better than it is today. These are the questions we would want to to pose, because the 2024 elections will center on elections. It will center on corruption. It will center on some of the issues, likely issues which came up, and caused, President Mahama, former president, to lose election. The Jida, the Shuba, the Ashofotone, and all those other issues. We are beginning to see a similar trend in the second term of the MPP, just as we saw in the second term of the NDC. If the trend continues like this, then, clearly we are likely to see, a change of government in the strictest sense, a new political party taking over. But if the NPP is able to at least turn things around, then we are likely, and I like looking through the crystal ball earlier. I'm not one of those persons who wait till a month to elections before I speak. If they are able to do something reasonable and significant to bring us to a certain level, and i.e. they are able to reconcile their ranks, because they are likely to shoot themselves in the foot going into these primaries to elect a flag bearer, because there's likely to be some, if you like, heavy levies that might degenerate into something else, and potentially cause a lot of cracks in their party, and also enhance the level of disunity which is subtle within the MPP. If they do shoot themselves in the foot, then it definitely a one round kind of election will let them exit. However, if they do not shoot themselves in the foot and they are able to reconcile their ranks, get back to their party base, and also stabilize the economy, it's likely to get Ghana go into a runoff potentially or possibly. Then possibly we are able to see a decider coming up. But if we were going to election today, the NPP itself has, rendered itself moribund as a result of the poor leadership that His Excellency the President is offering in these times that we find ourselves.
Prof, I will come back to you with a question which has to do with the positive story that can be told out of this situation that the executive find themselves in prosecuting one of their own. But let me just read a few comments that have come through and then try to speak to my other guests who are joining me tonight on the show. This one from Mercy Adubia watching us this evening says, I'm enjoying the conversation. I think that the professor you're speaking to really is on top of his game and he's very fearless. Another texter also watching the show, Patrick, says that, Sami, I'm happy that you're treating this topic and the dispassionate nature of your guest is making the conversation really, really very interesting. But the question is, would this also trigger the firing of Mr. Ken Oforiatta? There's a question that you are asking. Mr. Tete Mensa, also watching us this evening, says, Sami, I think by now the president must know that he's done himself in. He had the opportunity to have turned things around and refused. And now see how exposed he is. He had to take Anas Aremia Anas, the same man he said he was going to use his approach to bring down one of his beloved ministers. I'm hoping that the president learns lessons from this. Let me get other texters who have sent their messages through. Frank, also watching the show this evening, says, I'm enjoying the conversation, Mr. Host, but I want to find out from you, is it the case that okay, I think, let me just try and rephrase your comment. Is it the case that Mr. Charles Adu Boahene resigned or the president fired him? Because there are two conflicting issues out there. And I'm also wondering myself whether it's His Excellency the President who fired him or Mr. Charles Adu Boahene resigned himself. Because if you check out the post that he made on his social media handle, he says that because he doesn't want the bickering in the party, he had to resign. So it's for us to decide who we would believe. But let me go on the phone lines and then make contact and see if we can get Mr. Adib Sani and speak to him. Okay, Adib Sani is on the line. Adib, good evening and thanks so much for joining me.
Good evening, my brother.
I'm hoping you're doing well.
Very well. I trust you're good.
I'm doing well. I would have asked your reaction after watching the video, but I've seen your reaction already. You are saying that the CID must arrest and start investigations and prosecute Mr. Charles Adu Boahene. What informs this?
We are a country that is governed by the rule of law, just like yourself and myself or any other Ghanaian. When we fall foul of the law, what happens? The police arrest, investigate, and we have our day in court. And people are serving in.
All right, too bad. It looks like Adib's line dropped. We'll try and make contact with him again and then pick his thoughts on the matter. But I think it forced me an opportunity to switch back to Professor and then ask him this question as to the positive aspect of this whole conversation. Prof, would I be fair or would I be right to say that this puts His Excellency the President in the right light in the sense that he's acting on information which he's gotten firmly and decisively in terminating the appointment of Mr. Charles Adu Boahene?
I mean, yes and no. The initial bits you were talking about, triggered something in my mind. Fundamentally that, yes, the individual might have resigned. They will tell you privately in privacy that please make sure you resign so that you are not embarrassed and all that. And so sometimes they would give themselves the pep talk, tap, their shoulders and tell themselves it will be well. Let's just try to do something, to create a facade to allow the public to feel that I've taken some action. So we want to find out, right, in the days ahead, whether the president himself is repentant of these acts. Because you see, when you become stiff-necked and you don't pay attention to the truth that comes from rational actors from the state, you see, it is not everybody who would be a card-bearing party member, wear party T-shirt, become a foot soldier and cry on the rooftop. They will look at the science of development. They will look at the logics of development. They are interested in juxtapositioning, right, development. With what do you call it? Democracy and governance. Because we go to the polls to elect people so that they will provide the public good. They will provide the public good. And so fundamentally, if you have a minister, right, any actor whom you have appointed, and the person is non-performing, it is not, you see, the legislature itself, please can you hear me?
Yes, I'm with you.
The legislature, right, represents the millions of Ghanaians, right? Those who have capacity to vote, right, by law, and those who cannot vote. The constituents, right, the citizens have their MPs. These MPs represent our voice. Unlike the Athenian pristine form of democracy, we would have all met at the Greek police state, right, at the market circle, to air our views and grievances and to debate our state. But we cannot perform democracy as it was in the pristine form or the original form. That is why we have what we call representative democracy. So those people there, the parliamentarians there, represent all Ghanaians. And their voice represent the voices of Ghana. If the president cannot hear this is not quantum mechanics, quantum physics and all that. Right? This is even far below arithmetic. The president has failed woefully on this score. The president has failed woefully on this score. And he must be quick to put his acts together and tell Mr. Furiata to also resign before it gets too late for the MPP and for himself.
Prof, we would just turn around, and then when we come back, we will sustain the conversation at the point you've left us. We'll be right back. And welcome back to Fact Sheet Live on ETV, live on Nisim 95.9 and 100.1. We're joined back on the line by Adib Sani. Adib, it's good to have you back on the line.
My pleasure always, my brother. Sorry, the network was not so friendly.
I can understand. So I was asking about your decision to call for the arrest of Mr. Charles Boahene for investigations to commence, especially with the OSP also saying that it's going to commence investigations into the matter. What informs this?
Okay, so like I indicated, just like any Ghanaian, if you fall foul of the law, the police arrest you, an investigation is conducted, and you have your day in court. And I think that is what we're supposed to do, because there's a great deal of criminal culpability in what the gentleman did. I don't know, but at the very personal level, I've lost a great deal of respect for the office of the special prosecutor. I feel it is too political, and based on the number of cases that has come before that office and how it's been managed, I don't think that is the best place to go, unless he's willing to do something different. So, considering what we saw on the video, him talking about his ownership of a real estate company, the opening of bank accounts, there was some semblance of an intention to engage in money laundering, the need for the vice president to be given $200,000, and involving the brothers, the 5-6 brothers of the vice president in the deal to get his buy-in, 20% stake in an investment that is supposed to come to the people of Ghana, amounting to about $100 million. All of this is criminal. I'm not a lawyer, but I don't need a professor emeritus in law to tell me, or any Ghanaian, that what he did is criminal. And so the president has to prove that, yes, indeed, he's committed to addressing corruption in the country by setting an example of Charles Boahene.
Now, you say that you don't have a lot of confidence in the OSP's ability to impartially deal with this matter. Now, this feeling you have, what informs it?
Well, there's been a number of cases. I mean, we've seen how Martin Amidu came in, how he left. The La Bianca issue, what has become of that case, and so many other cases. And the office is political in the sense that it's the president who elected, I mean, who appointed the special prosecutor. And for some time now, I mean, a lot of the names that have come out are people who are appointed by the president. So how do you expect to be impartially investigated by someone you've appointed? There's no independence. Okay, if he was appointed independently, then he would have been able to do his job. I mean, without interference. But for now, even from the appointment process, I don't think that he would really be able to operate freely.
But the independence matter you raised, this gentleman went for vetting. Parliament had to go through his CV and ensure that indeed he met the requirements before he had to sit on that seat. His predecessor also went through the same process. And so I'm surprised that you doubt the independence of the office. It's the office we're talking about. He doesn't operate alone. He's got a deputy. He's got directors there who are helping him.
Absolutely. Who appointed him before he went to Parliament is the president. And the Parliament only processes him. Okay, and in the end, who signs his appointment letter? You know, is the president. Okay, so there's a bit of a conflict of interest here. There's absolutely no way he can independently investigate the president or people associated with the president who are deemed to have engaged in corrupt practices. And it's very similar to what Martin Amidu went through at the point even describing the president with some words I wouldn't want to repeat on radio or TV. Okay, so I think that rather is the Criminal Investigation Department of the Ghana Police Service. They are well resourced enough to look into the matter. If they are given the free will to operate, I'm pretty sure they should be able to do a good job. Already there's a lack of confidence in you know, the general governance structure by you know, a large section of the population. And in as much as what we saw yesterday is despicable, it is disturbing, but it should also be a unique opportunity for the president to prove to especially his critics that yes, indeed, despite what is going on, I'm still committed to fighting, you know, corruption by ensuring that he is arrested and prosecuted. As simple as that.
Your argument, you know, tempts me to want to raise other arguments. The judges and justices of the Supreme Court are all nominated by His Excellency the President. They go through the parliamentary system to be vetted, and then finally they become judges and they sit on cases. So if you're questioning the independence of the OSP, then obviously we should be questioning virtually every administrative head of every supposed independent institution in the country.
I don't think, I'm not a lawyer, but so far as I'm concerned, it will depend on the court. We're not talking about the Supreme Court here. I don't think the judge at a district court or something is appointed by the president.
No.
Okay, the person is a professional. Okay, so it's based on the merit of the case that he or she acts, even though in the past we've had, you know, allegations of, you know, corrupt practices, you know, within the judiciary and all that. But I think that it will be the lesser evil so far as accountability is concerned. And considering the attention this issue has, you know, garnered, it would also be an opportunity for the judiciary to redeem their image. But certainly, one thing is for sure, I can't trust the office of, you know, the special prosecutor to do, considering how political that office has become over the period. This is a straightforward case. I mean, we don't have to believe about it. It's straightforward. The CID just has to take it up and do what they're supposed to do in a professional, unbiased, you know, manner. So it brings closure.
You trust the Ghana police more than the office of the special prosecutor?
Absolutely. I trust the police to investigate the matter than the Office of the Special Prosecutor. Besides, already the Office of the Special Prosecutor works very closely with the Ghana Police Service. They rely on resources by the Ghana Police Service, and I don't know, but I think that still they are the best to go to so far as the nature of this case is, rather than the special prosecutor. And there's one thing about our system, okay? When someone steals yam or plantain or a smartphone, the way the person is swiftly prosecuted is different from the political class, and it's like our system condones such criminality, and there's so to speak a certain political privilege in the air. The person is swiftly investigated and locked, but for a politician, look, they would run it for years on end until you lose interest in it. A classical case being the one involving opening. Okay, so that's my fear. And sometimes it makes me wonder. I mean, I don't have any evidence to that effect. That's why I'm wondering whether there is some pact between the NDC and the MPP. Don't touch my anointed. When I come, I wouldn't also touch your anointed, because it looks like that is what we are seeing. And the system also is such that when, for example, you sit on TV right now and accuse me of engaging in corrupt practices, the system targets you, not me who has been accused, okay? So instead of the system coming to me, the accused, and saying that you've been accused of this and this and that, prove otherwise, rather the system comes to you directly, the accuser, and deals with you even before asking you what your evidence is. So when we do that, many people who have very important information that can lead from one thing to another and expose, more information, are scared to even talk in the first place. This chronism thing we've been talking about always, anytime we mention it, they tell us to bring evidence. But yesterday, Charles Boahene was very categorical. To win the buy-in of the vice president, involve his brothers. What do you call that?
Do you think, as much as the Vice President's office has spoken, do you think investigations must go into that allegation as well, as to whether indeed that's what pertains in the Vice President's office?
Absolutely, we need to investigate it. We can't just shrug it off. No, this is not the first time such issues have come to the public domain. In the past, we had the seats for something
Cash
scandal.
for seats.
Cash for seats.
Yep.
Okay. There's been talk about how people would have to pay for VVIPs to attend their events. You pay before you meet. And I have this friend who brought an investor into town to build a huge hospital that would be a central referral point for the whole of Africa. Okay. Unfortunately, any office they go, they want to extort money. And then the white man was like, but me, I'm bringing you money and I have to pay you before bringing you money. Anywhere I go, I'm treated like a king or a queen. So why does it have to be so? Okay, so in every rumor, there's always an iota of truth. So this should also be an opportunity for us to look into. Maybe the president or vice president is not aware, but the people around them, they might be using them for business without them knowing. So it's worth really looking into.
There's a quick one I need to ask you before we end the conversation, and that has to do with those who say that we need to pat the president on the back for the swift nature of sacking Mr. Boahene and calling for the OSP to investigate Mr. Boahene. Do you share that view?
He had no option, my brother. The president had no option. He would have made a mockery of himself if he had not taken. In fact, it was in the very best interest of the president to take action, especially in the wake of calls by the 137 majority MPs for the minister and the deputy minister to be removed. Okay, so I don't think the president really deserves that praise. This is even long overdue. He should have even been fired, without even being told to do so. So for me, there's nothing out of the ordinary.
All right. Adib, I thank you for making time to speak to me tonight.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Let me quickly dash to Prof and pick some wrap-up comments from him. Prof, you listen to Adib Is there any wrap-up comment you'd like to make under a minute, if you can?
I think we need to begin to look toward the future, and the fourth estate of the realm, your good self, must make sure that these issues that are coming up should not rest, even if the agencies of state or institutions of state refuse to act. You must make sure you project what government sought to do, promise people to do, and what government has done and what government has not done, and what government ought to do or needs to do. And so these are the issues that must come up from now till we come to the point of election. We should not allow government to rest, nor any other person who is paid from the, coffers, or the public purse. And that is exactly what must be done from the fourth estate of the realm to serve as a major check in as much as Parliament does its best to support within the same, realm.
Professor, thank you for joining me tonight.
You're welcome.
And my guests tonight have been Professor Mo Adijemfi from KNUST Political and History Department, sharing his thoughts with us. Adib Sani is a foreign policy analyst and security expert as well, sharing their thoughts with us tonight on the fact sheet. I'd like to thank you as well. There were several comments that came through this evening, but for want of time, we weren't able to go through all of them. But I'll thank you for being a part of the discussion tonight. The back team that made this possible, I say thank you very much for being a part of the show. Have a blessed evening.